Let's talk some tennis. Joining us from over at Wimbledon is friend of the show, reporter, author Chris Clarey. Chris, how you doing, man?
Gentlemen, I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, I mean it's kind of early for a Grand Slam tournament. It's only 10 p.m. here. Usually it's like 3 in the morning when you're covering tennis these days.
We
Is it
appreciate you joining us from over there. Go ahead, Jeff.
is it 100 degrees like it is here?
I wish it were 100 degrees actually. I feel like it's been like having the spring, a rainy spring in the middle of the summer here. We had
I was gonna say,
umbrellas and chill. Yeah.
has it stopped raining yet? I mean, talk about impacting the schedule. 7 of 9 days of rain to start the tournament. What's that been like for you guys?
Today the sun did come out and people were dropping to their knees and staring at the sky all around the grounds.
Did they put away the ark?
People stopped lining up two by two. Exactly. No, it's good. All
Uh,
good. Hopefully we'll have a good finish. But honestly, I think it's funny now is that when these tournaments happen with the majors, Wimbledon was famous for more than a century for having those rain delays, and people would invent all kinds of English and non-English ways to find diversions, and pop singers like Cliff Richard would sing in the stands. Now they got the two roofs, so nobody outside of here knows how bad the weather is. But the people that are, regular players, not the stars, and the average fans who have grounds passes, it's been hellish. This really hellish week.
You've been around some of the greatest tennis players of our generation. Um, I do have a question about one of them that's playing in this tournament, though, and we'll get to Nadal later on. But Djokovic is an enigma to me, in that it seems to me, and you would know better this, he almost needs not to be liked. Like he needs this motivation to move forward. And what I'm talking about is his need to, after winning a match, to kind of scold the fans for booing, but realizing they weren't really booing.
can you tell me what this sentence means? I know they were cheering for Rune, but that's an excuse to also boo. That one got me.
So
Look, I don't
is it
know.
a self motivation thing?
He does speak six languages. I mean, I'm not kidding. He really speaks six, and maybe he's got this ability to like identify phonetics in a crowd when he knows when they're saying "rune" or "boo." I don't know. I mean, he's a lot better than I am. I've only got three, and so no way am I doing that. It did seem like it was unnecessary roughness to himself and to them. My best explanation for Novak, I've known him since he was, I think I first met him when he was 17 or 16. He's always been this restless personality, somebody who has this questing type of attitude about things. And I would argue that he doesn't like stasis. He doesn't like stability. He likes when things are too smooth, he needs to shake it up because I think he identifies friction and disruption with progress in his life. And obviously, the life he's led as a Serbian kid growing up in the dissolution of Yugoslavia and the war times and a lot of sacrifices and friction within his own family and own circle. I think honestly, it's probably a universe he's pretty comfortable in. Not that he'd seek out, issues like that, but I think he's very accustomed to living in a certain kind of flux. And I think that's probably where he senses progress comes out of that friction. Maybe that's what he's looking for if you're trying to get all
But he's
Freudian about it.
creating this friction.
Yeah, but even so,
This was
I think he does. He could have a coaching situation that's going well, and he's in a good environment with his team, and he'll shake things up. He just shook things up this season with his Goran Ivanisevic, his coach, who's helped him through all kinds of things, including the pandemic and all that mess in Australia with the vaccination issues, and then he shook up his team. He changed everybody around, got rid of his fitness trainer, got a new one. So he likes to, I think, at times do that to give himself new energy, new focus, new perspectives.
Seems like it's overshadowing the larger story, though, is that he's doing this coming 3 weeks off knee surgery. I mean,
Yeah,
talk
I
about
mean,
his health right now. I mean, he got lucky. He got a walkover in the quarters to advance to the semis because his opponent injured himself, so that had to help with the health. But talk about how he's doing this after recovering from knee surgery.
surgery, yes. Technically, he had an orthopedic surgeon do it. It was more of a procedure, I would say, in some ways. I mean, that maybe helps explain it. I was corrected by some orthopedic surgeons when I said, he's had it repaired after the French Open when he had the problem with his knee. And they go, oh no, it wasn't a repair, it was a trim. So he had his meniscus trimmed, which I guess creates a whole lot less inflammation and creates a whole lot less of an issue with recovery. Nonetheless, every surgeon I spoke to two or three of them, um, and they all said, well, Wimbledon's not happening, but the Olympics probably will, which starts later this month. So he surprised even them. And it is, he's he definitely, his body is his temple, and I think he's able to. He did have a precedent. Taylor Fritz, the American, who got to the quarters here this year, top American men's player, had a similar thing where he hurt his knee at Roland Garros 2 years ago, maybe 3, and he had the same trim, a different doctor, and he came back and played at Wimbledon and won a couple rounds. So Novak had consulted with him and knew that it was possible. But nonetheless, I mean, come back at age 37, trying to be the oldest man to win this tournament in the Open era, and be able to play as well as he has, going into splits on the grass and running around it's remarkable. I mean, anybody else getting a trim wouldn't be doing that.
Let's talk about Taylor Fritz and the Americans. They seem like a young, exciting, bold group of guys, but they can't seem to get beyond a certain point. Is this group of players good enough to win at some point?
Yeah, the grass ceiling, if we're going in for bad puns here, but yeah.
I like that one.
Thanks.
They're basically the Sixers. They can get so far, they just can't get any farther.
I'll leave that to you guys. My American metaphors are hurting on the team sports, but too long in Europe. But I think that's right at this point. I mean, they haven't proven you otherwise. And the problem I always said was, it's great that these guys are showing potential, and we've had some lean times in American men's tennis. I mean, I think John Isner did better than people probably realized looking back. Big 6'10" John. He won a couple big Masters Thousands tournaments in Miami and had some great results over a long time, top 10 player. But I think just because the memories of Sampras Agassi career and all that crew were more recent, and Roddick had done pretty well, it didn't shine by that. Now it's been a while. So we get guys like Taylor Fritz and Francis Tiafoe, who got to the semifinals of the US Open last year. Tommy Paul got to the semis of Australian Open last year, and it did very, very well, has done very well this season. Those guys are all, top 15 players. But the problem is, guys who are younger than they are, the Alcarazes, the Sinner, to some degree, Rune or Boo or whatever his name is, those guys have all had better results, and they've all shown more potential at an earlier age. And so basically, not only are Paul, Fritz, and Tiafoe fighting Djokovic in the golden generation, they're fighting a new golden generation. So it's, personally, you could see one of those guys landing a slam here or there, maybe if things play their way, but in normal situation, it is hard to see it. Deep runs, sure, but they're going to be up against it with guys like Alcaraz and Sinner.
I wanted to ask you about the tennis you're seeing being played over there. You had an interesting interview with Coach Brad Stein on your Substack, talking about how the game has changed on the grass court. And he points to, all you have to do is look at the wear on the court. There's only wear behind the baselines, the green inside the lines, and the quality of court. It's a true bounce. Can you talk about how the men's game has become a lot more similar to the women's game, playing primarily from the baseline?
Yeah, I think Brad, I'm glad you read that. That was a fun, long conversation with Brad for my site. And I've always had a lot of respect for him. I think hasn't got the credit he deserves for coaching across many generations and having success with guys like Jim Courier and Kevin Anderson, and now with Tommy Paul. So that's a separate issue, but I really like his perspective on the game. And he's right, it has changed a lot. I mean, I think the equipment of tennis has changed a fair bit, as in golf it has, and other sports, but really has had a big impact on tennis because it's made it much harder for guys to come to net and hit good volleys, because the quality of the passing shots and the returns has gotten so much better because the strings are able to generate spin and dip. It's very hard to hit a great volley when the ball's dipping at your feet. Pop it up, the guy can pass you easily. Guys can generate power from positions that they could not before 25, 30 years ago, because they can just get out there on extreme positions and just whip the ball with their rackets and just create crushing power. So it is a harder game. And then a lot of guys, it's the way the game is. They spend their whole junior careers practicing their baseline game and their backhands and their forehands, and then they get to the pros and they want to try to add the volley. And these, unless you've done something at a high level throughout your early career, it's very hard to acquire it later. So a bunch of factors working together. But it's true. I mean, I was out at the practice courts at Wimbledon today. I went out and had my lunch there. It was a little ray of sunshine. I said, I'm taking my bag lunch and going to go watch some practice. I was out there, and you see these practice courts, and the part inside the court itself is almost pristine green, and the baselines are worn down to dirt. And especially if you want to get really tennis-y about it, the left side of the baseline's the most worn. That's because the guys who are hitting the inside-out forehand, they're running around their backhand and hitting out of one corner. So the game has changed a great deal, and I think hasn't always been for the better in my view. I think even though you have great stars like Federer and Djokovic, Nadal, I think I like my tennis as varied as possible, and guys do come to net, but that court doesn't lie.
All right. Well, I'm gonna be the old guy on the call. I'm the one who complains about back here in America, complains about baseball and tradition and stuff like that. But I also recognize that in order to make the game better, they had to change some things. Um, to me, tennis needs to get better again. It needs to find a way that the fun volleys, the 20, 30 volleys back and forth, the running, the diving, the drop shots need to come back. Is there anything that can be done to do that short of making them use wooden rackets again?
No, yeah, I think it's a fair point. I think across the spectrum, what you're talking about, it applies. If you would go back and watch Carlos Alcaraz play Novak Djokovic in last year's Wimbledon final, I think you might be surprised by how much of what you just described was in that
Yeah.
match.
Uh-huh.
And if you watch the Sinner Alcaraz match at the U.S. Open at an ungodly hour a couple years ago at 1:30 in the morning, if you're sensing a theme here, there is a theme. But
It's way too late for us.
maybe I'm just my getting older issue. But the fact of it is, those guys, they play all court tennis. They just don't serve in volley very much, like McEnroe used to do, or Stefan Edberg used to do, or Pete Sampras used to do. But they do use the whole canvas, and it's often spectacular. And Alcaraz has been a one-man drop shot resurrection team. He's brought the drop shot back, especially the forehand drop, which is a shot that really hasn't been around very much until he's brought it back into play. So I love him. He's box office. He's not yet, fully comfortable in English. May not translate to the masses when he speaks yet, but he's somebody who's got a fantastically telegenic game, and he has all the shots you described. So seeing his success is wonderful, because people are going to go, well, I should try some of that myself. And you see some more guys now trying the drops, trying to come into net and surprise. But Carlos has this lifelong skill set that he's acquired from training intelligently, with a lot of forecourt and attacking play. And a lot of the guys he's competing against haven't done that. So they aren't going to be as good at it, and they probably won't do it as much, but at least he's there. So there is somebody doing that.
The men's side of the bracket was much more chalk. You had the 1-3-5, and then Lorenzo Musetti sneaks in with 25 seed into the semis. On the women's side, you've got an unranked player, you've got 31st ranked player. You had the top 3 seeds out early in this tournament. Can you talk about just the play we've seen on the court through these 2 weeks?
I mean, I suppose outside of clay, where Iga Swiatek has been often unbeatable, everything else, I mean, chaos is not chaos in women's tennis. I mean, it's what you're kind of used to. There have been 7 different women's champions here in singles in a row at Wimbledon. Obviously, you go back in time, you're going to have Serena, Venus dominating, but after Serena's sort of last win, it's been a lot of transition, a lot of change. And then you have stuff in relatively recent memory, like Emma Raducanu winning the U.S. Open in 2021 as a wild card. Not sorry, as a qualifier. Never happened before. Didn't lose a set. So and Marketa Vondrousova, who won Wimbledon last year, had really no pedigree on grass, came through and did well. We have another case this year, Jasmine Paolini, who just got to the French Open final. Very high energy, upbeat Italian, big hitter of the ball. Had never won a match here, and 3 years of previous appearances in Wimbledon. Now is in the semifinals, and a good shot to get further. She's going to play against Donna Vekic in the semis. So I think people are used to unsettled situations in women's tennis, and what you're seeing, best of 3 in the women's game, really it's a matter of who's healthy and who's hot and who's going to be able to put it together. And it's not anywhere near as stable a landscape as the men's game is.
Where did Paolini come from? I mean, Italy, I know, but she looks like she's 14 years old, but she's not. She's in her late 20s, and people are only just learning about her. How did she fly under the radar for so long?
Well, I think she's a lot of times in tennis, it comes down to confidence and coaching. And so she's added a new coach, Renzo Furlan, who was a, very good Italian pro, not a champion on the major level, but a very good one. And he's had some success coaching in the past, and he's been with her now for a little while. And I think he's allowed her to see her strengths. I mean, she's small by modern tennis standards. People like, I guess look at Rybakina, who from Kazakhstan, who's still in the draw here and is probably the favorite and won Wimbledon a couple of years ago. 6 feet tall. Arina Sabalenka, 6 feet tall. Coco Gauff, 5'9", but plays bigger because she's able to really, be so athletic around the court. Swiatek, 5'8", 5'9". Paolini's maybe 5'4", 5'3". And so on some surfaces against kick serves that get up above your shoulder, it's harder to do damage. On a court like the grass court, where the ball does still stay lower despite the changes they've made to make it a truer bounce, she is very able to generate huge power on a lot of shots. Seems to have a good varied game. But honestly, some of it is not entirely explicable to me. I mean, I wouldn't have ever picked her to be a 6 months ago. Would I have picked her to be a finalist at Roland Garros and potential finalist at Wimbledon? No way. No way would I have chosen that. And I think I've been around tennis a bit, but it just shows you how sort of much talent there is, how much parity there is behind those very 2 or 3 top players in the women's game. And I think you watch her play, you watch it happening in front of you, and she's crushing the ball consistently, taking it early, really pushing other players to have less time and react. And she's got a wonderful, positive energy about her. And somebody pointed out to me that a lot of tennis players appear to be going to the dentist when they're playing their sport. It's like it's an agonizing sort of thing, as they're on the court. I don't always think about that, but you look at people, it is a lot of suffering. And Paolini is a wonderful ray of sunshine. I don't think she's always been that way, but in the recent months, even in defeat, she has shown a real positive energy. So I know she's worked on her psychology as well. But we've had a few cases in tennis in recent years where somebody in their late 20s has broken through, and player she's going to be playing in the semifinals on Thursday, Donna Vekic, is in her late 20s, and this is her first Grand Slam semifinal as well. So there are quite a few stories of that happening. I think it's because there is such a slim difference between these players in the top 50 and 60.
Well, let's hope we don't get a lot of letters from dentists now. But
I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe things have changed there.
But you touched on coaching a little bit, and I don't think the regular fan, not the diehard, really understands how important coaching is. And we saw a clash of player and coach play out during a match between Coco Gauff and a very good coach in Brad Gilbert. What exactly happened?
I was not on the court. I just watched that after the fact. I mean, the rules of tennis have changed in the last couple of years. At the majors, they've now allowing coaches to interact with their players and actually coach them during matches, which for people who don't follow. Sorry?
Is that a good thing?
Well, that's a worthy discussion. But I think it's interesting because it always sort of happened on the sly, at least most of the time. People would give signals or, touch their nose or, say out a code word that would mean, serve down the tee or serve wide or whatever it might mean. But there was no really consistent sort of narrative coaching going on. Well, that rule has been lifted now. WTA started doing it partly for desire to make the game more marketable. The men's tour have resisted for a long time, but they sort of cracked and allowed it a year or so ago. And honestly, I thought it would be, as an old school guy and somebody who really liked the gladiatorial aspect of tennis, I thought it would be problematic. I thought it would sort of take away some of that rugged individuality that you see in champions. Honestly, you don't even notice it half the time because they're sort of talking from the sideline. Players might gesture at their box, get a little bit of coaching here and there. But I do think it's going to create some interesting issues like what happened with Coco, where you're going to have a situation where coaches are going to be held directly accountable for what's happening on the court in a way that they weren't before, because before they couldn't really do much, and now they can in real time. And Coco has had some tough struggles in some of these big matches, despite her U.S. Open victory last year, and has some repeating things in her game, her forehand and second serve, that continue to crack and break down. And I think, I don't know, maybe she's looking for a way to share some of that stress. And she does have 2 coaches now. She's got Brad and Jean-Christophe Farrell, who's a French guy who was with her before many years ago, who's come back. So whenever you have 2 coaching voices and you're trying to do real-time adjustments in your game, that could create some confusion. But I think, honestly, it's frustration, but frustration you might not have seen without these rule changes.
Well, and normally she would have more time to figure it out between now and the U.S. Open, but she's going to go right back to Paris for the Olympics. Talk to us about how this is going to impact players who are used to their routines and schedules that now go from Paris to the All England Club to back to Paris.
Yeah, it's a good question. And honestly, tennis, it's tough because every 4 years this happens. And even when there's not an Olympics involved, the schedule in tennis is way too packed. And they've made some changes. They've lengthened some tournaments now in terms of the play, like Rome and Madrid now on the clay. They're going to extend some of the ones in the U.S. now, like Cincinnati and North America with Canada. They're going to make them into basically 2-week events like the Grand Slams. which sounds like, okay, well, the players have more time between their matches to rest. But actually, when you're on site at a tournament, you're in a different sort of stress mentality than if you're kicking back at your house for a week and then you go play a tournament for a week. So this is all starting to happen now. So I personally think a lot of what we're seeing at Wimbledon this year, with a lot of players getting injured, a lot of players sort of looking like they're pretty tired of being on the road already, is due to this schedule change and what's going on. And now you're going to add on the layer of Olympics after the grass court season. Good thing is there's no time change to speak of. 1 hour back to Paris. It's a pretty easy trip. But as tennis players will tell you, you know, the grass to clay transition is a tough one, not just on the body, but just in terms of your timing and everything else. Now they're going to go clay to grass to clay, and then they're going to go back to hard courts for the U.S. Open swing. They have done it before once, 1992, Barcelona Olympics, similar schedule. And there was two very big surprise champions at the Olympics. Jennifer Capriati won the women's title at 16, I think, even though everybody knows Capriati, she wasn't the favorite. And a guy named Marc Rosset, you may not have heard of, a Swiss player, won the men's gold in singles. Big surprise. So maybe we'll see that again, because the top players are maybe have put too much of their energy into all these other tournaments. It'd be hard to pick against Iga Swiatek and for the gold medal on the clay at Roland Garros in the Olympics.
Looking forward to seeing Nadal and Alcaraz play some doubles. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, Nadal this is what he's doing. He just landed in Båstad in Sweden today. Private plane, arrived there for the clay court warm-up. He hasn't played since the French Open when he lost in the first round. He looked pretty good to me there. Is he going to be able to win the Olympic gold in singles? I don't think he's going to, but I bet he could do some serious damage. And then seeing him and Carlos in doubles, Alcaraz has not played a lot of doubles, but he's got to be good looking at his skill set. And it'll be fun to see that come to fruition and see those guys playing together.
Chris, you mentioned Nadal. You're in the process of writing a book on Nadal. What's it been like? And this is after writing a great book on Roger Federer. What has it been like following Nadal, talking to his family, talking to players, and learning about his life? And what have you taken away from that maybe you didn't know about Nadal beforehand?
Now that's a nice question. I'm not going to tell you the answer to that one yet, because we're going to get way ahead of ourselves on the book.
Good try.
But I love a question. And can we postpone that question?
Yep. Now you are now agreeing on air to come back
until the book. I would love to come back. You guys were wonderful with my book on Federer, the Master. I appreciated that. All I'll say is that the book isn't coming out till next year, and I think whenever you plunge into these things, this is not a book with Nadal. Just so we're clear, neither was the Federer book a book with Federer. This is an independent book. It's based on all these years of covering Nadal, and what I've known him since he was 16. I met him at Wimbledon and met Tony, his uncle, at the same time. And I was living in Spain at the time. I was living in Sevilla in southern Spain. I'd been there for a while, so my Spanish was a heck of a lot better then than it is now. But I really, you could tell he was something special then, with his amazing point-by-point ability to focus and compete and just have no memory of what just happened and just do it again. And somebody who just, I think, comes from a very special environment in Mallorca, the island that it is, with the very tight-knit culture that it is. Could be suffocating to some, but it's a remarkably supportive place that also teaches you good values. And I think a lot of what people compliment in Nadal are the values, and the fact that he's somebody who treats people with respect and his opponents with respect, and the locker room attendant with respect. And a lot of that comes out of those sort of small multi-generational communities that he comes from. So of course I'm learning a lot, and I can't wait to, give birth, get it out.
All right. Well, we're going to bookmark that one. We're just going to go back. My last question to you is the guy.
I gave you a little bit. There.
That's right. A little teaser. But you also wrote a book on Roger Federer. We've talked about it in detail. Roger, for again, the casual fan, Roger always seemed cold. He didn't seem, but he seemed to have come out of his shell since retirement. He seems more comfortable in his own skin. He seems to be enjoying life in a way that I mean, he has the money, obviously, to enjoy life the way he wants, but even the documentary that's now coming out about his final days on tour, he just seems like we all now are able to get him to know him through video the way we got to know him a little bit through your book. Are you surprised by who he is now out there, and that he hasn't just kind of faded away?
No, I'm not surprised at all. Actually, he said that's what was going to happen. So, And his agent, Tony Gatzik, who I've known for a long, long time, said the same. He goes, "Hey, he's going to retire, but you're not going to see the last of Roger Federer. He's going to be out there." And there've been some tennis champions in the past, Borg, Sampras, John McEnroe. No, John McEnroe has been very visible, as you guys know, since he retired. Steffi Graf, another one you don't hardly hear about.
Even Andre Agassi, you don't really hear from.
Andre has his moments, but he does.
Mhm.
He's been very family focused, and I think very focused on Vegas and everything else in schools. But Roger, no, Roger is an extrovert. Roger wants to promote the sport. Roger enjoys the international business side of things, and I think he realizes his brand is part of that. So I think he's, I don't know how many concert stages he's been on, but it's more than I've been on, that's for sure. Taylor Swift just recently, he was a Coldplay. Am I missing somebody? Elton John? I don't know. But he's been like on stage singing the songs with, and I'm not sure it's a good look for him to be singing anything with anybody, but he's on the
like a
stage.
follow-up.
Nobody's pushing him off.
I think he's asking his kids, "What should I do?" And they go see this person. So he goes and does that. So no,
It's
he's very
like a
visible.
follow-up book after you finish your Nadal book. Roger
I
Federer.
don't think I have the energy to keep up with him. I don't think I don't have the travel budget to keep up with that anymore. The New York Times is not paying anymore. So no, it is not surprising that he is as visible as he is, and I think he's got other roles he wants to play. And as far as the documentary, I don't know how many people actually from your listening to your show will have seen it, but it's very emotional. It's, in my view, too limited in the scope. They had an opportunity to do something a bit broader that would have been very cool to delve into a lot of his past. They chose not to do that, to keep it very targeted on the last few days of his career. I mean, it's a lacrimose thing. There's tears everywhere. I mean, it's like,
I wish they would have done that. My wife and I watched the David Beckham documentary.
Yeah.
And that one delves all the way back from him being a child to him being an adult now, past his playing date. I wish we could see that from Federer. How did he get to be the man that he is? Obviously,
how many
but
episodes was Beckham? How many episodes was that? Do you remember?
4 or 5, maybe more.
That's,
I mean,
that's
really
a sweet spot, right?
Yeah, it was entertaining. It was well done, and it mixed in the past with the present, and you got a picture of how they got to be who and what they were.
Well, I suppose there was a documentary done a few years ago called Strokes of Genius, based around the 2008 Wimbledon final between Nadal and Federer, that great match. And they did use that as an opportunity to go back into some of their origin stories and all that. But, there have been talks. There were some preliminary rights purchased for my book for a documentary in the style that you're referring to. Roger's Amazon thing took precedence. They went that direction and chose to do kind of a 1-episode thing. I would not be surprised if what you're talking about ends up happening at some point down the road. But
we will demand it, Chris.
We will.
I would love it. Yeah, I got one more college kid to pay for, so let's do it.
Well, we're all about it. And look, we appreciate you taking a break from all the chaos over there in London to break it down for us. Always appreciate you giving us some time. Enjoy the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, you guys are great. Thanks so much, and appreciate the good conversation.